When the name Adolf Hitler is mentioned, certain scenes appear before our eyes. Concentration camps where around 1 million people were murdered. The greatest war the planet has ever seen. Fiery speeches delivered with enthusiasm. The largest rallies in history. And the ruined image of Berlin. All of these inevitably bring Adolf Hitler to mind. Some of us may also remember him through these drawing sketches from Adolf's youth, from the period when he wanted to become an artist. So, how did a young Adolf, who sincerely dreamed of being a painter, turn into one of the most powerful and infamous dictators of the 20th century? What were the reasons behind his success and his cruelty? To answer all of these questions, we will take a journey through Hitler's, starting from his, closely examining the critical points in his rise to power and the events that shaped his way of thinking. If we are ready, we can begin. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1899 in the town of Braunau am Inn in Austria-Hungary. His father was a customs officer. 3 of Adolf's siblings who were born before him died in infancy due to illness. His mother Claire raised Adolf with great care so that he would also fall ill and die. When Hitler was 10 years old, his 6-year-old brother Edmund died of measles. This deeply affected him. From that moment he turned into a sad and withdrawn child. He lost interest in his study and began to display undisciplined behavior. These actions led to him being subjected to physical violence by his father. This situation continued until he lost his father at the age of 14. After his father's death, Adolf dropped out of school and first worked in a few small jobs. When he turned 18, he applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts with the dream of becoming a painter. However, this application ended in great disappointment for him. He was not accepted into the academy on the grounds that his talent was not sufficient. Sometime later, his mother died of breast cancer. When the academy rejected him once again in 1900, he found himself having lost his last hope, completely penniless and without support. During this period, Hitler stayed in men's hostels and municipal shelters in Vienna, trying to make a living by selling the landscape painting he drew to shops and tourists. During his time in Vienna, he had the opportunity to get to know Jews closely for the first time. Until the only thing he knew about Jews was they belonged to a different religion. Over time, Hitler's thoughts about Jews changed. According to what he later wrote in his book, Mein Kampf, whenever a theatrical performance or a piece of music was exaggeratedly praised, he would see that it was of Jewish origin, and those who exaggerate were again Jews. He believed that Jews had taken over many fields, favored one another, and placed themselves ahead of Germans. That Hitler's rejection by the Academy of Fine Arts coincided with this period also caused him to develop an uncontrollable hostility toward Jews. What disturbed Hitler was not limited to Jews alone. When his political views were beginning to take shape, he also started to feel uncomfortable with the multinational structure of Austria-Hungary. In his containing so many ethnic elements was doomed to collapse sooner or later. Hitler had not found what he hoped for in Vienna. Therefore, using the last savings left by his father, he went to Munich in May 1913 in search of new opportunities. He tried to survive for a year by selling his paintings. On June 20, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a Serbian national, Gavrilo Princip, during his visit to Sarajevo. This assassination caused Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia. After Russia, which did not want Serbia to be annexed by Austria-Hungary, declared war on Austria. Germany also entered the war. With the involvement of France and England, World War I began. This war was the first link in the chain of events that would start Hitler's rise. Without wasting any time, Hitler volunteered for the German army. Unlike many soldiers, he did not complain about the harsh conditions. After the lonely and poor life he had lived in Vienna and Munich, his life finally seemed meaningful for the first time. He fought with great dedication. In October 1916, he was wounded in the leg at the Battle of the Somme and was taken for treatment. After his treatment, he returned to the front in March 1917. On October 15, near Ypres, he suffered temporary blindness during a poison gas attack carried out by the British and was hospitalized again. While he was beginning to recover, he received the news that Germany had surrendered. This news infuriated him. When the armistice was signed, Germany was still on enemy territory, and he found surrendering irrational. Like many German nationalists, he believed that Germany had not been defeated on the battlefield, but at the negotiating table, and that it had been betrayed by traitors. After the war, Hitler returned to Munich, where he began working as a political agent for the army. The German government viewed the far-right parties that emerged after the war as a threat. So many agents were assigned to monitor their meetings. As one of these agents, Hitler began attending meetings of the German Workers' Party in September 1919. However, this assignment produced an unexpected result. Hitler began to feel close to the views of this party. Like him, the German Workers' Party embraced an idea of socialism based on nationalism. With every meeting he attended, Hitler's interest in the party grew. At a party meeting held on September 12, 1919, a spectator named Baumann stated that Germany should separate and unite with Austria. Hitler became very angry at these words and stood up to scold the man. He had a distinctive oratory talent. When he began to speak, everyone fell silent and listened attentively to every word that came out of his mouth. Humiliated by Hitler's insulting remarks, Baumann was forced to leave the meeting. One of the party's founders, Anton Drexler, was very impressed by Hitler's performance in the debate and therefore invited him to become a party member. Feeling close to the party's views, Hitler accepted the invitation and became one of the few members of the German Workers' Party. Normally, military personnel were not allowed to join political parties, but Hitler was given special permission on the grounds that he could carry out his duties more effectively by rising within the party leadership. However, the authorities did not yet realize that Hitler's intention was not to inform on the party. In fact, Hitler wanted to rise politically by leading the rise of this small party. Shortly after becoming a member, he resigned from the army in March 1920 and began devoting all his time to his political career. In the same year, he became responsible for the party's propaganda. His first move was to change the party's name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Over time, party members would come to be known as Nazis. In Germany in 1920, all the conditions necessary for the development of extremist parties like the Nazi Party were present. Anger over the loss of the war and economic problems caused widespread unrest in the country. Hitler intended to turn this crisis into an opportunity for his party. Until then, National Socialists had addressed small audiences in small bars, but Hitler's speeches attracted tremendous attention. In a short time, thousands of people began attending these meetings. His promises were listened to with interest, and the number of his supporters increased day by day. In this way, Hitler quickly became the party's most popular member. In June 1921, members of the party's executive committee wanted to merge with the Nuremberg-based German Socialist Party. However, Hitler announced that he would never accept this merger and angrily resigned from the party. The committee members knew that Hitler's resignation, the most important figure behind the party's popularity, would mean the end of the party. Therefore, they immediately began efforts to persuade him. Hitler was aware that a great opportunity had come into his hands. If he played his cards right, his rise would be inevitable. He told the committee members that he would withdraw his resignation if he were made party leader instead of Anton Drexler. As a result, the offer was accepted, and Adolf Hitler became the party leader on July 29. Now, it was time to make larger-scale political moves. When Germany lost World War I, the Treaty of Versailles limited the German army to 100,000 soldiers. This decision left many soldiers unemployed, and some of them joined the Nazi Party. One of these soldiers was an officer named Ernst Röhm. Röhm reorganized the former soldiers who joined the party in 1921 under the name Sturmabteilung, Storm Detachment. They were tasked with providing security at meetings and intimidating members of rival parties when necessary. In October 1922, Benito Mussolini marched from Naples to Rome with his militia units known as the Blackshirts and seized power without encountering resistance. Hitler wanted to do in Germany what Mussolini had done in Italy. At that time, 3 men held power in Bavaria, the center of the Nazi Party. These 3 were endowed with extensive authority: State Commissioner Gustav von Kahr, Bavarian State Police Chief Colonel Hans Ritter von Zeisser, and General Otto von Lossow. On November 8, 1923, Gustav von Kahr was addressing a large crowd at one of Bavaria's largest beer halls, the Burgerbräukeller. Hitler, together with his SA units, stormed the beer hall and forced Bavaria's 3 key leaders to join him. Seizing the opportunity of having such a crowd before him, he also delivered a speech to the audience. He managed to impress everyone in a short time. Deafening applause erupted inside the beer hall, louder than ever before. All of this seemed to signal that Hitler's coup would succeed. He planned to first seize control of Munich and then march toward Berlin, believing that the army and the police would support him during this march. On the morning of November 9th, Hitler began marching toward the center of Munich with around 3,000 supporters. The group advanced without problems until they reached the vicinity of the Bavarian Ministry of Defense, where they were blocked by about 100 police officers. In the ensuing clash, 16 Nazis and 4 police officers were killed. Hitler was also wounded during the clash but managed to escape. However, this escape bought him only 2 days. 2 days later, he was arrested and imprisoned. At his trial, he emphasized in a calm and gentle tone that he had been forced to carry out a courageous act in order to save the people. Standing before the judges was, in fact, one of the greatest speakers in history, and this inevitably influenced the outcome. Hitler, who was tried for treason, received only a 5-year sentence and was released on December 20, 1924, after serving about 9 months. While Hitler was in prison, the German Workers' Party received 3% of the vote in the December 7, 1924 elections and gained 14 seats in parliament. During this this period, as the destructive effects of the war slowly diminished, the German economy began to stabilize. These developments hindered the rise of the Nazi Party. In the elections held on May 20, 1928, the party's vote share declined. With only 2.6% of the vote, they gained just 12 seats. However, the following year, in 1929, the outbreak of the economic crisis known as the Great Depression in the United States caused the party to regain popularity. As in the rest of the world, it had disastrous consequences for Germany. In a country struggling to pay war reparations, unemployment and poverty skyrocketed. This environment provided the Nazi Party with the opportunity to expand its voter base. During this period, Hitler launched a propaganda campaign, taking advantage of the economic crisis. His ideas attracted both the poor masses and industrialists who feared the rise of socialism. Many businessmen began to support the Nazi Party financially, enabling Hitler to reach wider audiences. In the September 14, 1930 elections, the National Socialist German Workers' Party achieved its first major electoral success, receiving 18.3% of the vote and increasing the number of its parliamentary seats from 12 to 107. This was an extraordinary success for the Nazi Party. However, no one yet knew that this was only the beginning, perhaps except Hitler himself. His next goal was to be elected president. In the presidential elections held on May 10, 1932, Hitler achieved a great success by receiving 36.8% of the vote, but the election was won by his rival Hindenburg, who received 53%. After the presidential election, two general elections were held in June and November, but no party was able to secure a majority in parliament. Nevertheless, the Nazis obtained 230 seats in the June elections and 196 seats in the November elections, becoming the party with the most seats in parliament in both elections. Using this strength, Hitler proposed to President Hindenburg that he be appointed chancellor. Hindenburg accepted this proposal, believing that he could keep the far-right masses under control by using Hitler. Thus, on January 30, 1933, Hitler was appointed chancellor in a formal ceremony. Shortly after Hitler became chancellor, a fire broke out in the German parliament on the evening of February 27, 1933. Claiming that the fire had been started by communists, Hitler used the incident as a pretext to expand his powers. The next day, he had President Hindenburg sign a decree abolishing constitutional articles related to personal rights and freedoms. With this decree, the publications and election activities of all parties except the Nazi Party and the German National People's Party were halted. Under these conditions, in the elections held in March 1933, the Nazi Party under Hitler's leadership received the highest number of seats in parliament, with 43.98% of the vote. However, 324 seats were required for a majority, so Hitler formed a coalition with the German National People's Party. On March 23, 1933, with the Enabling Act he presented to Parliament, all parliamentary powers were transferred to the cabinet for 4 years, and parliamentary activities were suspended for this period. To enact such a law, a two-thirds majority in parliament was required. To achieve this, Hitler had 81 communist deputies arrested before the vote, and on the day of the vote, parliament was surrounded by SA units, preventing some social democratic deputies from entering. Thus, the necessary majority was secured, and the Enabling Act was passed. After the law was adopted, Hitler banned all parties outside the Nazi Party and shut down all unions, associations, and organizations not affiliated with it. Parliamentary democracy in Germany thus came to an end. From then on, real elections would no longer be held, and parliamentary members would be determined by the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Hitler thus became the absolute ruler of Germany, while President Hindenburg's powers were reduced to symbolic levels. As Hitler's absolute power increased, the leader of the SA, Ernst Röhm, began to argue that the German army should be controlled by the SA. Moreover, he insisted that the Nazi Party should demonstrate its socialist side, arguing that large companies should be nationalized and dismantled as soon as possible. For this reason, on the night of June 29, 1934, Hitler had Röhm and other opposing figures arrested and executed. Following this event, known as the Night of the Long Knives, hundreds of high-ranking SA leaders were killed. While securing the support of the army, Hitler also eliminated the SA as a threat to his authority. About a month later, after President Hindenburg died on August 2, 1934, Hitler organized a referendum on the presidency. As a result of the referendum, with 89% yes votes, the public approved Hitler becoming president, while also continuing his role as chancellor. Thus, Hitler became the sole authority in the governance of Germany. During his rule, Hitler ensured the revival of the German economy. The rearmament program he launched as soon as he came to power, along with hospital and school construction projects, created employment for German workers. While other countries struggled to cope with the crisis, the German economy began to recover rapidly. By 1939, Hitler had settled the country's internal issues and now turned his attention outward. Germany first annexed Austria and then Czechoslovakia. Hitler was carrying out, one by one, the goals he had described in Mein Kampf, which he wrote while in prison. As he wrote in the book, his aim was to establish German unity. His next goal was to expand the country's borders eastward and settle the German race there. For this purpose, Hitler formed an alliance with Russia and declared war on Poland on September 1, 1939. This war would mark the beginning of World War II and result in the deaths of 80 million people. With every move he made in his political life, Hitler became a more cruel and more ambitious man, eventually becoming the greatest dictator in history. We have come to the end of this video in which we explained Hitler's rise. If you would like our next videos to be on a particular topic, please let us know in the comments.